space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Oh, and that's the way we introduce Walter Koenig. It's not ensign anymore, is it, though? You've been promoted.
I've been promoted, and I've also been retired.
What kind of a pension do they have?
We still get royalties from the feature films. That's our pension.
That's it, yeah. Those wonderful, shall we say, creative bookkeepers at Paramount, and they're not the only ones. They've kind of juggled the books over the years a little bit.
I'm sure that is certainly within the likelihood of possibility.
It's not often that I am able to introduce someone in this fashion. I can say actor, director, screenwriter, novelist, acting professor, and please, we don't have the drum roll, but comic book creator. All Walter Koenig. That's amazing.
Well, I failed to the same degree in every endeavor.
You've risen to a level of mediocrity in all of them. So yeah, I tuned in Friday on TNT and I caught Babylon 5, and they did a repeat of Epiphanies. So I saw that Friday.
Uh-huh.
And how many of those have you done now? I guess close to a dozen, something like that.
Exactly. That was my 12th.
Yeah.
12th and last.
Yeah, that's good. Before we get any deeper into the interview, and first of all, for people who don't know, this is Walter Koenig, and he was one of the featured performers, shall we say, in the Star Trek TV series, but then we shall say that he has since gone on to bigger and better things. He has written a wonderful book called Warped Factors. Gee, I wonder where he got that title, but it's subtitled A Neurotic's Guide to the Universe. Taylor Publishing is the publisher on that, and it just came out recently. I was going to say something fairly profound, and then I lost my train of thought there. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Babylon 5, the creator, is a gentleman who goes by the credits of J. Michael Straczynski.
Right.
Okay, I first became acquainted with that gentleman, it's got to be 15 years ago, when he was writing a regular column for a magazine that I subscribed to for many years called Writer's Digest.
Mm-hmm.
And he was marvelous. He just gave the best advice and hints and on and on. And then all of a sudden I read one day, like, gee, he's ending his column, and I thought, they can't be firing the guy. No, he went on to bigger and better things too.
Indeed. He's also written a couple of books on screenwriting and television writing, and how to go about it and how to sell it, and which are really, really wonderful books. And I recommend anybody who's interested in this industry and writing for this industry that they pick them up.
Well, there are many people who try to put out such works, but I would say that his are right at the top. They're right up there. Well, hey, that's enough about him. We're interviewing you. So
oh, yeah, that's right.
We could talk about him anytime. I think I can get myself off to a good start here if I were to say that if I ever met Bill Shatner face to face, I would want to say to him, "You dirty skunk, ya." Huh? Would that be fitting or what? See, now you know I read the book.
Yes, at least that chapter.
Yeah, that goes back a way to your youth, and that was a familiar refrain when you were in school.
Right.
Yeah. I will say this. Years ago at another radio station, they had Mr. Shatner on as a guest one day, and we passed each other in the hallway, and I will say at the time he was not wearing a certain bit of hair.
Yeah.
And I was a bit taken aback.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll just let that go at that. So, at any rate, I enjoyed the book. Good book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, what I want to know is there another one in the works? Because I'm assuming there's enough other tales that you didn't put into this one that you could do another one.
Well, what I tried to do is relate anecdotes, stories, etc., that I thought would hit a responsive chord. I mean, there's all sorts of minutiae in my life that I could have detailed, but I chose those particular episodes that I felt the audience could identify with.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of I sort of see myself as an everyman, and that my life could have been any one of our readers' life. I got incredibly lucky with Star Trek, and it is, on the whole, a very lucky experience for me. And then I suffered through the bad times, and was able to endure. It was just, I think, endurance and perseverance and luck. That
When we hear the term struggling actor, it could certainly apply to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess it was either stupidity or the fact that I didn't know what the heck else I could do with my life. But even when I hit the depth, when I was absolutely at the bottom, I managed to get by those periods and come back, bounce back, and keep at it. And I think that's ultimately the message for anybody. That if you care about something and it's it's your passion, then you must follow through. I think it's only one life we have, and I think it's important that we do what we feel driven to do.
Aside from the fact that I was looking forward to reading the book for just the normal reasons, there were a couple of other things that I learned that made it come a little closer to home for me. Obviously, my last name being Strauss, and then I'm reading the book and I find out your mother's maiden name is Strauss. And I was like, wow, this is just too weird to believe.
Yeah.
And then you dedicated the book to your late brother, Norm, and Norm is my dad's name.
Wow.
It's just like too much for me to take in, so... You had a teacher at an early age, Mrs. Rothman, who had at least some faith in you to the point where she expressed it and kind of built you up.
She was wonderful. She was sort of sandwiched in Ms. Farrell and Ms. Form, and Ms. Rothman was just first of all, she was beautiful, and I was madly in love with her. I was in the fourth grade at the time, and then she just kept. She was very supportive at a time when. I felt that I was at best, a mediocre scholar, and at worst, something far more severe than that. And she was just there for me. And I think everybody should have a teacher like that along the way. It was very important at the time.
Yeah. Our guest is Walter Koenig. He has recently finished a book called Warped Factors, An Erotic's Guide to the Universe. And again, Taylor Publishing is the publisher on this. It's, I'm assuming, available in all the bookstores right now, right, Walter?
Yeah, Barnes & Noble's carrying it, and Borders, and B. Dalton, and whatever the other, as well as the individual stores as well.
I'll tell you another thing that I really liked is the arrangement of the book, the way you did it with the short subject and all the various movie titles and the like, and how they actually paralleled exactly what you were talking about in each chapter.
Yeah, I had to, in some cases I really had to dig to find movie titles that were
well,
appropriate.
It worked.
But,
it worked.
It worked, yeah.
Yeah, and the short subject for people who will, I'm sure will be people at the bookstore, they'll pick it up and they'll thumb through and they'll get the first couple of pages. When they read the short subject and there's kind of a little clincher, a little zinger in there, I had a smile on my face as I read that. That was cute. I like that. So you did well. You did well. Yeah. When you were young, you got into performing in plays, as many children do, but what was it that separated Walter Koenig from the rest of us who also did musicals or did a play, and we went on and did the so-called normal things in life, and yet you chose this path that led you to the stage and screen and television?
Well, I only chose it after I had sort of eliminated everything else. I went to college, and I was a pre-med major to begin with, and discovered that I had no aptitude at all for physical sciences. And I transferred from a college in Iowa, Grinnell College in Iowa. Your folks out there in the Midwest even might know of this school. And I transferred to UCLA. I changed my major to psychology, and although I did pretty well, when I came to my last semester of my senior year, I realized that this was sort of the thing that I disliked doing least, which was hardly a recommendation for a career. I took one course in one class in acting, more simply as a diversion, and the professor, his name is Art Friedman, became sort of a mentor for me, and he was the one that my father had already passed away, and he was the one that sort of guided me to drama school in New York. And it was at that juncture that my fate was sealed, and really not before then.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that you can still pull from the old days? Do you still remember, let's say, the first time you went up on a line, or the butterflies, or is it it never becomes just routine, does it?
No, it never becomes routine. You know, maybe it would be better if it did, because I bring a level of tension into every performance I give. What I've learned to do is to channel that tension and make it work for me more than I did when I was a younger actor, at least more consistently than I did when I was a younger actor. But no, I remember going up on lines when I was in third grade. I remember what it felt like. And you never lose those things.
Probably like the lookout seeing that iceberg at the Titanic. Something, you know, it's total helplessness. You know,
exactly.
What's
exactly.
next? Do you find, like many performers do, that playing a villain like you do with Bester on Babylon 5, that's a lot of fun?
Yeah, well, I find playing a character that's so dimensional a lot of fun. Villain is sort of the result of all of the ingredients that have been written into the character. It's just that he's a strong character. He's a character with dimension. He's a character with nuance, and he's a character with highly motivated. He isn't simply there as an expository tool of the plot, which was generally the case with Star Trek. You know, it's a situation where Chekhov would say, "Captain, there is a ship out there. What are we going to do? Or what are you going to do?"
Oh, gee, I just went back to 67, right there.
And in this case, there were a lot with Bester, the character I played on B5, there's a lot of first-person personal pronouns. It's I, and the character expresses himself and what he feels.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what makes it so exciting for me. That's what makes it such a challenge, because I have to kind of dig in and dig deep and find what it is in me that I can relate to the character, because ultimately, for an actor, credibility in the audience's eyes has to first happen in your own. You have to believe in the character you're playing.
Exactly. How about a question from one of our listeners? You ready?
Sure.
Okay, let's bring aboard Larry. Larry's calling from Mount Sterling, Illinois. Larry, you're on with Walter Koenig. Hi, Larry. Is he there? Oh, he's on. I'm sorry, I brought up the wrong line, so let me do that. Now I got him there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, hi, Walter. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay, I love you on Star Trek. You're one of the best players on there. And I just wondered, I got about 3 questions for you. The first one is, of the 3 spin-offs, which one do you like the best? Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, or Voyager? And also, can you tell us what's happened to your wonderful son, Josh Koenig, who played Boner on Growing Pains? I loved him so much on that show. And we just discussed your 3 appearances on one of my all-time favorite dramas from the 60s, Mr. Novak. I've got all 3 of those episodes on videotape, and I love you in them. They were really great.
Holy cow, this is a fan.
This is a gentleman who knows the history, indeed.
He does indeed. Okay, so your favorite of the spin-offs?
I guess it would be Next Generation. I'm not conversant, nor am I an authority on any of the 3 shows. I've seen Next Generation the most, and I thought that was a particularly interesting take on Star Trek, one that that really stood on its own.
Sure.
So I'm very fond, and I'm very fond of the people who were in it. I think I know them a little better than I know the other actors.
Mm-hmm.
My son Josh, he's now going by his middle name, and he has for a long time. It's Andrew Koenig. He was indeed Boner on Growing Pains. He worked for a while. He left the series on his own volition. He chose to do other things, and moved to Vancouver for a while, and now is back. And after several years of introspection and self-analysis, he has decided that he wants to do acting again. So he is just now initiating reigniting his career.
And your reminiscences of Mr. Novak, that was very kind of almost the primordial ooze for you.
Well, they were all exciting roles. At the first episode, I played the defecting Russian student, and that was what ultimately led to Star Trek 3 years later, because having been cast in that by Joe DiAgusta, 3 years later when he was the casting director on Star Trek, he brought me in, having remembered my performance. So that was particularly memorable for me. Another part, I played kind of a weak bad guy, being led by somebody else, and it was a fascinating little characterization. At least the way it was written, hopefully in the playing as well. I liked it. This guy was kind of a coward and kind of a wimpy guy, and it was a departure, and I found that really interesting. thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one was I was a rabble-rouser. I was sort of the Mario Salvo of that period. He was the fellow who went to Berkeley.
Yeah, the free speech guy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This was sort of built on his character, a guy who's a young man who's trying to arouse the school, the student body to rise up against the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
So all three roles were very interesting and very different.
Okay, we thank you, Larry, for your call very much. And Walter, we'll let you know we're going to take a little break right here. Our guest is Walter Koenig. Our time is 9:28. Those of you who are into Star Trek, or if you are into Babylon 5, or if you're just kind of into Walter Koenig like Larry appeared to be, this is the book for you. It is called Warped Factors. Back with more after these words. And yes, that music is from Alfred Hitchcock Presents, another of the fine TV series on which Walter Koenig guest starred early in his career, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that goes back a ways right there. We have several people on the line who would like to talk to you, Walter, so before I get to the Neighborhood Playhouse here, let's bring in first Ron. And hello, Ron, you're on with Walter.
Hi, Dave. I'm
Hi.
Walter.
Hi.
Hi. Do you still have all those sculptures I made for you?
Ah, Ron Lazordi.
Yes. How are you doing? It sounds like you haven't slowed down at all.
Yeah, great. Yeah, of course I do. Of course, Ron is a wonderful, dimensional artist. And I'm a comic book character collector. And he made these wonderful, wonderful sculptures for me of Golden Age superheroes. And I still exhibit them proudly.
Good.
I have a feeling this is going to cost me another sculpture. It's been really nice talking with you. I hope that the book does real well. I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
And will you be coming back for any conventions in the near future, or plugging your book in person here?
Well, I think, the slanted fedora folks, people who are taking George Takei, Nichelle Nichols, Jimmy Doohan, and myself around the country to do conventions. I think we have an appearance scheduled for either late this year or early in 99 in St. Louis, so it's something to look forward to.
Oh, that's great.
Wonderful. You still have your Big Little Book collection, or?
I have everything.
Really nice talking with you.
You too, Ron.
Okay, Ron, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
And let's also bring aboard Mike. Mike, you're now on with Walter Koenig.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Walter.
Hi, Mike.
I have two questions for you. First of all, there's a dispute going on what Chekhov's first name was supposed to be.
Really? I thought
Yeah.
everybody knew it was Pavel.
Pavel, thank you. That's the one I said. He said I was wrong, so I don't remember what he said it was. But and the second one was, do you have a favorite episode in particular?
Television or features, or it's easier to talk about the features because Star Trek 4 was definitely my favorite from
That's the one about saving the whales, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. As far as the television episodes goes, there were several. Spectre of the Gun. We went back to the OK Corral. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Trouble with Tribbles and I Mud and Who Mourns for Ed and I guess those are the ones that I was in. My all-time favorite was City on the Edge of Forever, but that was before I was off the show.
I had a feeling you would say Trouble with Tribbles. For some reason, I just had a feeling that would be one of them you would bring up. I don't know why, but it was kind of a good one. It was one of my favorites. But well, it's been nice talking to you.
Okay,
You too,
Mike.
Mike.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You know, one thing that I just have to bring up is the number of people that you worked with at the Neighborhood Playhouse. Now, we're going back a ways here. We don't want to date you too much, but shall we say Eisenhower was still president? Well, we'll just leave it at that, right? But and this is by no means meant to be name dropping at all. But I look at this list, and we've got Dabney Coleman and Christopher Lloyd and Brenda Vaccaro and Jessica Walter and Jimmy Kahn and Elizabeth Ashley. This was not a bad little group of people.
No, I think this was rather unique that out
Yeah.
of a class of the size that we had, that so many people became so exceptionally successful. I mean, all these folks have starred in movies, and several Liz Ashley and Brenda Vaccaro have starred on Broadway. So yeah, they're terrific, terrifically talented group of actors.
Mm-hmm. And you go on to describe in the book meeting Christopher Lloyd when he was going to do the feature, and you guys kind of pulled a couple of pranks on each other over the years.
I wish I could consider it a prank.
Yeah.
It was, I really loved I'd rather dwell on the really positive things. But Chris was doing. I had run into him after several years, and I was doing Star Trek 1, and he was doing Taxi. And I knocked on his dressing room, and what I didn't understand was that it wasn't Chris Lloyd who opened the door; it was Reverend Jim.
Yeah, sure.
And he maintained that persona during the course of our conversation, which I guess, if you look at it a certain way, in retrospect, I guess it could be funny. At the time, I was rather disappointed because we had been real buddies, and he was so vague and so disoriented, or so it appeared to me, that I thought that I didn't know what had happened to our friendship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, things like that happen. He went in a different direction, I guess.
Another name, and we were talking about some ironies earlier, on the Alfred Hitchcock Presents, this episode, Memos from Purgatory, Harlan Ellison was the guy who wrote that. And then funny that, in a sense, you're going to cross paths with him again a couple of different times, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, we established a friendship on during the course of that shooting of that television show. And we have been friendly and not so friendly over the last 35 years, back and forth. We still maintain a relationship, and we see each other once in a while at Babylon 5 events, and I speak to him on the phone, and he's the same irascible, brilliant writer that he has always been. Those
are two very good adjectives to employ when speaking about Harlan Ellison. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
I was a fan at a fairly tender age, but it was I thought a good show, The Lieutenant, with Gene Roddenberry, and you worked on that show as well.
Yeah, I did a guest lead on that, and opposite Gary Lockwood. Gary was the regular, was the star of the show, and he subsequently, did one of the very first episodes of Star Trek. I've run into him recently. I've run into him at conventions, and although he didn't remember me from The Lieutenant, which I can certainly appreciate, having worked with a lot of actors when he was doing the show, we did reminisce about our days on Star Trek, and again, still a very approachable, very accessible chap, and I found our conversation stimulating.
Another person about whom you reminisce very fondly in the book is the late Vic Tayback. And very, very shortly after his passing a few years ago, I happened to be in Las Vegas, and Mr. Tayback had been there, I guess maybe just a few weeks before, and he was watching some boxing event, and I was at a dice table, and I mean, just to hear these guys bemoaning the loss of this man, because it was apparent from the way they spoke that he was just the nicest, cuddliest teddy bear, good guy, all-around human being. And I thought that it was so different from many times his screen persona, but
right.
it was very easy for me to believe, though.
Yeah, he was a very nice man. He was a very, very talented man. I don't think the industry ever got to see just how talented he was. It took appearances on the stage to really get an insight into how prodigious his abilities were. Yeah, we went back. We didn't see each other, on a regular basis, but our friendship maintained itself over the course of, at least since 1962, until he passed away.
Yeah, it's a tragedy because people like that just simply cannot be replaced.
Yeah.
We're talking with Walter Koenig. He has recently penned a book about his life. It is called Warped Factors. And Taylor Publishing, again, is the publisher on this. When we come back after this break, I'd like to ask you about an endeavor that I know was near and dear to you called I Wish I May. We'll be talking about that with Walter right after these words. See, now there's people in the listening audience thinking, what is Strauss playing the theme from Combat for? But there's a reason, isn't there, Walter? Well, I thought there was a reason.
I'm here.
Yeah, there wasn't a tornado activity in your area just then, was there?
No, I have a portable phone. And
that's quite all right. No, we were just playing the theme from Combat, and I was relating how that was also one of your early endeavors.
Very early. That was one of the very first shows that I did, and it was a small role, but Robert Altman was the director. he's gone on to extraordinary.
Yeah, he's done
things.
okay.
Yeah.
He's done all right. Before the break, we said that we were going to talk about something that was near and dear to you, and that was I Wish I May. At an early stage of your career, you decided to tackle a project that a lot of people, I think, would look forward to with great trepidation.
Yeah, things had slowed down. It was early 1967, and things had really slowed down. I wasn't getting any work, and I thought that perhaps I could start something on my own. I could get something moving, and I wrote a screenplay, and I looked for financing, and managed to find enough together enough money to be able to make a feature film with my wife Judy Levitt and an actor named Gus Koenig, who had been in West Side Story on Broadway and had done the film as well, and subsequently married Goldie Hawn they were married for a time. In any case, I put it together, and we came out, and I wrote it as a comedy about three young actors struggling to make it in Hollywood. We shot 90% of it within a 30-day period, and what happened was I then was cast on Star Trek, and we had to postpone the last 10% for a year. And when we finally got around to finishing it, my wife was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, and we had to shoot her from the neck up, sort of. But it was a wonderfully, although it was fraught with frustration and anxiety the whole time we shot, it's still one of those experiences that I really cherish because I saw it through. I saw it from beginning to end, and we had a feature that was about 95 minutes long. It had a musical score.
And not a bad little guy to connect with the music either.
Yeah, Michael Martin Murphy.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right. And he did the music. His group, which was then called the Lewis and Clark Expedition, they did the music for us. We didn't sell it. Came close on a couple of occasions, but we didn't sell it. It wasn't quite good enough. And perhaps it was presumptuous of me to think that right out of the, right off the bat, I could write, produce a film and work in it and get a sale. But it didn't quite happen. I had been since then. I have been invited to sell it as a video cassette, and when I look back at it, when I took it out of the drawer and I looked at it again, I said, "Nah, I don't think so."
One thing that we haven't discussed yet is when the original Star Trek series was canceled. We're talking 3 years on NBC and a total of, what was it, 79 episodes, if I remember correctly. But there had to have been some warning signs, when they move it to Friday night. I mean, first of all, whoever the network programmers were, somebody had something in the bee in the bonnet or something weird like that. And then they start casting as guests in I just couldn't believe this myself at the time. Melvin Belli? I mean, give me a break.
Right. Melvin Belli was an attorney, a renowned attorney, and a friend of the then producer. Gene Roddenberry had walked away from the show when he felt he had been betrayed by the network. They had told him that they put the show on at 8 p.m. on Mondays, and they ended up putting on at 10 p.m. on Fridays, which was really kind of a grave shift time slot.
And you're going to lose a lot of your teenage audience.
Yeah, to be sure. And a lot of other people, a lot of folks are out on Fridays.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
That was the situation at that time. And I thought Melvin Belli was to cast a non-actor in a very important role, a guest starring role, was really a blasphemy. Not only because he was dreadful, but because he was a non-actor. And actors have hard enough time finding parts, working and making a living. And I thought it was a capitulation that it was a sign that we had surrendered to the Nielsen's and to the network, and that we knew we were going to be canceled, and so why not?
Yeah.
I thought that was a bad mistake.
Following the demise of Star Trek, and then before the first feature film came about, here's Walter Koenig and doing some TV movies once in a while, and some other guest appearances, and some teaching and trying to write and everything. But amidst this is an audition for a very, very famous TV movie, Helter Skelter.
Right.
And I think of Walter Koenig as a very talented performer, but I would have to say, and I think you agree in the book, that Steve Railsback nailed that performance.
Yes,
I mean, you know,
it was wonderful.
I'm sitting at home watching it thinking, this guy is one spooky dude, you know?
Right. That was the part of Charlie Manson.
Yeah.
They had auditioned a lot of people on the West Coast trying to find the right actor for the role, and I'd come up empty, and I had heard about it, and I sort of was one of those occasions when you kind of push yourself into the mix. The director knew me as a writer and was reluctant to even have me read because he didn't think I was right. But finally, with the help of some other people who called him on my behalf, he did have me read, and he was. It was a really, even though I didn't get the role, it was really gratifying reading because I really turned him around.
Yeah.
In terms of.
How does one go about auditioning for the part of Charlie Manson? Do you go in like frothing at the mouth or something? Or?
No. What I did was I knew there was a documentary playing around town about the Manson family, and I took a tape recorder and hooked it up to the speaker at a drive-in, and I just watched him, and I observed him as closely as I could, and I took home the recording of his voice, and I just focused on that until I could get the melody and I could get the sound, the dialect, and sometimes you worked from inside, sometimes you worked from outside. All of that, plus my seeing him, gave me a sense of who the character was, and you fill in. You know the heinous acts that he has perpetrated, and you fill in what you don't know psychologically. You draw from whatever atavistic nature you yourself possess, and I came in and I really did impress him, and it looked for like 30 seconds or 2.5 minutes. In industry time, it's really like 2 weeks, but it seemed like that to me. It really looked like I was going to play the role. Steve Railsback was being touted by Elia Kazan, a brilliant director with On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire, and his work carried a lot of weight. And in this case, of course, he was absolutely dead on right. Railsback was brilliant. So
would it be fair to say, though, Walter, that it basically ended Railsback's career, though?
No,
I mean,
don't think so.
He's gone on to do other things. I've seen him many times.
He worked a lot in Europe.
Yeah.
From what I understand, and then he did Stuntman, I think, with Peter O'Toole. I think.
Right. That's correct.
And he's. I don't think he. I would have thought, that kind of a role and that kind of a performance would have catapulted him into another strata.
Mm-hmm.
From what I know, it did not. But that was. I don't think it was his fault. I mean, he was an extremely talented man, and I saw his name recently. He's
still working.
He's still working.
That's good. Well, speaking of people who are still working, Walter Koenig certainly falls into that category. Warped Factors, again, is the title of the book. And we need to take one more break here, so thank you for your patience, Walter, and we'll be back right after these words. Strauss here. And we welcome back to our airwaves Walter Koenig. He has written a magnificent book titled Warped Factors. Taylor Publishing is the publisher involved here. There's just no way in an hour to do justice to someone like yourself, and also to talk about this multifaceted career that you've had, but I have to get in a couple of other things here, if you don't mind. I'm watching an episode the other day on TV Land of The Lone Ranger, and who is the guest but DeForest Kelley, right?
Oh, yeah.
And as I am watching that episode, I am literally on the page in your book where you are describing the Dr. J farewell. And I mean, you talk about almost getting misty-eyed. This was just like too weird. What, if you will, share with our listeners what happened, because it was a special moment.
Yeah, Dr. J, of course, is the basketball player, Julius Erving, and he was making his last trip around the league, and he was in New York at Madison Square Garden, and they were honoring him as other cities had. And of course, at the time, Madison Square Garden was owned by Gulf and Western, which also owned Paramount. And the theme they hit on was to have all these famous doctors from real life and from fiction there at halftime to also as a way of honoring Dr. J, George Serving. And they asked DeForest Kelley, of course, who played Dr. McCoy on Star Trek, if he would come in for this occasion. Well, there was, as I say, there was I think there was Dr. Spock and there was Dr. Ruth and Dox and the Seven Dwarfs and several others, I think. And when they introduced D, the place went nuts. And 19,000 people stood up and cheered and cheered and cheered. It was like a 6 or 7 minute standing ovation.
How moving!
Yeah, it must really been. And D related the story to me with a sense of awe because he had never experienced anything quite like that. I think and he added, I think it's a very fair tribute because he is a terrific guy, a really wonderful, warm human being, and if anybody deserves that kind of approbation, it would certainly be DeForest.
Yeah. As I said before, there's just no way that we can do justice to an interview like this. I hope somewhere down the road that we could impose on your good graces again and finish this up properly because there's so much more. Would you believe I took more pages of notes for this interview than any other interview I've done in the last 9 years, in 2 years, in the last 2 years. So that's got to be some kind of a tribute to you. I hope you understand that.
Well, I appreciate that.
We didn't get into, is Leonard Nimoy's directing style better than Nick Meyer? And there's just so many other things that I had to ask. But somebody wanted to know, when you guessed it on Gidget, did you ever figure Sally Field would be the big star she is today?
Yeah, she was terrific on that show. She was one of those innately talented individuals who, at the age of 16 or 17, was performed like a seasoned trooper. So she was great, and I think she deserves all the success she's had.
Yeah.
By the way, I quickly looked up my itinerary or our convention schedule.
Okay.
And we are listed for January 9th and 10th in St. Louis.
Really?
1999. Yeah.
We will look forward to that, January 9th and 10th. If there's any way to properly promote it again before then, we'll do so, okay?
That's terrific.
That sounds great. Congratulations on the book, Walter, and I think down the road there is certainly a market there for another one, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to turn you over very briefly to a familiar voice, and I'll say my goodbyes now and continued success in your career, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, Walter Koenig is the name, and you know him from all of those episodes of Star Trek and, of course, all of the motion pictures over the years as well. And like I say, if you are a fan, you certainly want to go out there and get a copy of the book. It's called Warped Factors. Taylor Publishing is the publisher on this one. It was just released not too long ago, and he mentioned B. Dalton and Borders and all of the better bookstores have a copy of it right now, so rush right on out there. Okay? Now, our